Good evening. I'd like to call the village board meeting for the village of Cary for February 13th, 2024 to order with roll call, please.
Dudek,
Here.
Weinhammer,
Here.
Walrath,
Here.
Collier,
Here.
McAlpine.
Here.
Thank you. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving to the open forum where the public is invited to make an issue-oriented comment of any matter of public concern not otherwise on the agenda. We have nobody here, so that's open and closed at 6 o'clock. Our first agenda item and only agenda item is a discussion on the fiscal year 2025 through 2029 capital improvement plan. So turn it over to Courtney. You're starting? I think Eric's going to start.
That suffices for the intro, but yeah, thank you, Mayor. Staff is going to be taking you through a presentation on our fiscal year 25 through 29 CIP. This is the first of our series of budget workshops, and with no further ado, I'll turn it over to Courtney to start us off.
So tonight we'll go over the budget calendar, our objectives of this meeting. Staff will summarize what has been placed in the 5-year plan. We'll talk about total costs, review our existing revenue sources, and then any comments and questions, we can go over the whole plan. So this is the first of 3 budget meetings. Our second budget meeting is where we would look at the proposed FY25 budget, which is across all funds, and then we would review that for final budget consideration on 4/2. So the next one will be held 3/16, and then final budget would be on April 2nd. So what are the objectives of a CIP? To inform the public and the village board about upcoming projects, to receive feedback and answer any questions about those projects or funds. It also helps staff in planning not only upcoming projects, but also what the objectives of the board are long-term. This meeting is only for discussion. No final decisions are made at this time. You may have seen this slide before, last year especially. These are just the strategic priorities the board and staff have at this time. So community image, infrastructure maintenance, public safety, workforce development, economic development, financial stability, and environmental stability. So as staff was proposing projects and putting the plan into place, these were the priorities we were thinking about. Just wanted to go over a few of our capital accomplishments this year. So there were a number of projects completed that have been in the CIP for even before I was here, really. That includes the downtown streetscape, the new pavilion, painting the water tower, as well as installing the new entryway signs. We also completed a redesign of our website, launched an economic development website, choosecary.com, and we have continued to implement our GIS both for the back end for our employees as well as on the public-facing side. We ordered our first all-electric vehicle, which will be used by the Water Division, and we did receive a grant which amounts to about 60% funding for the Depot Plaza project. That was through the RTA Access to Transit. So we'll kick it off with the community outreach and economic development. So you'll see first here, Public Works of Art program. In next fiscal year, we're proposing 2 murals. Staff has been working closely with District 26, Cary Junior High, and then also the high school to have the students create murals. One will be placed on well 13. The other will be placed at the wastewater treatment plant's office building. So that's why you see $10,000 in the water fund and $5,000 in the sanitation fund. And then in the out years, we have put in $15,000 in 26, 27, and 28. That could be paid for through the TIF fund. So that could be downtown murals, the utility wraps, really any public art the board would like to see. We have proposed Cary Main Street Fest, $25,000 each year over the 5-year period. And then we've also proposed to continue GIS mapping at $12,000 per year. And then in FY26, staff is proposing $30,000 for a village-wide community survey. So this would be a little more robust than what our current budget survey is. It would look at village performance across the departments. You may have seen other communities have a survey similar to this. Algonquin comes to mind.
Can I ask questions as you're presenting?
Sure.
Okay, so I just have a question about the TIF fund and the finances for the Public Works of Art program. Can the TIF fund also be used for, road maintenance and anything, or is there certain categories that it has to go into?
There are certain categories, but road maintenance is one of the categories.
Okay,
We'll go through quite a few TIF projects.
okay, thank you.
So on the economic development side, the business facade grant program that was approved and put in place by the board earlier, well, actually late last year, we are proposing $40,000 per year coming out of the TIF fund, which would be utilized for those businesses within the TIF, just colloquially calling it the downtown businesses, but whatever is in the TIF. And then we are proposing $25,000 a year to come out of the capital fund for the non-TIF businesses. And then we're proposing $93,000 next year, and then $90,000 in the out years per year for economic development. That would include our economic development specialist, any updating of marketing, such as our economic development brochures, as well as the welcome video. So that's where the $90,000 is coming into play there. And this one is a little new to the board. It is preliminary engineering for the Jack's Channel property. This has long been a property in the comprehensive plan for development. Staff is proposing $52,000 coming out of the TIF fund in order to complete preliminary engineering, which would include topographic survey, floodplain analysis, bathymetric survey, geotechnical borings. Basically, this information would allow us to better answer questions when the development community comes in, and also determine how much of the property is able to be developed.
Courtney, can I ask a question on that, since that's up? Not long ago, we had some folks from Arlington Club come to us and talk about certain things. Do we have any insight to how they feel about potential redevelopment of Jack's Channels, given this is a great picture. It shows you how potentially impacted they could be. I'm just curious.
I'll let Director Simmons answer that question.
We've not had direct contact with them regarding the property. I know previous developments that had been proposed for the Jack's Channel site did get some interest from that area and the neighborhood that's further to the east down Spring Beach Way. So I would imagine if any development were proposed there, it would be right in the backyard of those residents, so they would come out and have some concerns. And certainly we would review a project and try to mitigate any impacts there would be on adjacent properties.
Do we think there's any merit to being a little proactive and maybe reaching out, letting them know about this?
You could, obviously, but keeping in mind, though, that there hasn't been a development proposal in place, so it's hard to do outreach on a proposed project and what the residents might feel about it if we don't know the exact scale and scope and location. Part of the thought behind this proposal to do the preliminary engineering is to help answer some of those questions that developers might have that maybe would look at the property and would consider the property, but because there's those question marks out there, we'll try to, this would at least answer them and maybe kickstart some of that development interest. Once that occurs, obviously there'd be a lot of coordination involved, especially with our general process for TIF projects and for plan unit developments with conceptual reviews and so forth. And then there would be plenty of opportunity for public input.
Is that one of the biggest hangups right now with developers coming forward is they don't know the viability of that project, that property even?
Yes, yeah, there's a number of challenges to the site, and you can just,
Well, yeah.
by its location, it's, by the river.
Water.
Correct. That's always usually an issue for buildings to deal with water. So generally, developers have looked at it, that they generally will look for more greenfield sites that are just, flat, as opposed to this property has a lot of topography changes and then access to the river as well. So they'll generally, we'll look at it and then it's not in their purview, so they don't want to go through the headache of determining what they need to do to, you know.
Who owns the property right now?
It's a private family,
They
property.
don't, well, so would we ask them to contribute to this if they're trying to sell it, or would?
So, yeah, so the ability for the TIF, for these funds, you know, we certainly, there's the ability to ask for reimbursement. We were just proposing to do this work through the TIF. And then as a developer were to come in, there might be the ability to have an incentive agreement so that those funds can be contributed towards that agreement for improving the site, or, you know, other improvements that would need to be done to the property from that standpoint. But this is generally just to perform a survey, determine where the wetlands are on the property, get that determination, and then get some of the preliminary information that a developer would look to know of, are the soils suitable for building upon, and things along those lines, so that it's can kickstart that process to know in advance of, you know, this is the challenges that are here and how much of the site actually could be built. And, you know, just by looking at the aerial that's showing there, you can see where the property line goes along, you know, close to the Arlington Club there. There's that island that's in that peninsula area, so that would not be developable. Anything that's developed is on the far west portion of the site. So, you know, just by the contours of the property, the pin, you know, that you have there, maybe 60% of it at most is actually buildable. And that's where trying to determine how much of that can be done, and then that would help to answer questions for the community to see if we can jumpstart something on the site.
And you may also recall the comprehensive plan did look at some concepts for different parts of the village and different sub areas. This was one of those. So there was some extensive public outreach with at least a high-level conceptual look at this property back at the time that the comp plan was done as well.
I would also add that most of the people that are in Arlington Club have been there for a very long time, so they are aware that this has been something on the radar. We've talked many times that we're the only pretty much town on the river that doesn't have any river access. So I think that this to me is a perfect example of how a TIF should be utilized, is to say, let's look at this, let's see. It may come out and say, we can't do anything, and then okay, we know what the deal is, but right now to not be able to know, I just think it's a smart way to utilize some TIF funds to figure out what we can and cannot do.
I agree wholeheartedly. We've met with the property owners before, and they've asked for assistance, and that we didn't have the funds to do
Mechanism
this.
to do it, right.
So this is a perfect example of why a TIF is needed there. And you know, we've been dealing with this piece of property forever, and I think when you're having a concise, formal analysis of the property when you're dealing with developers is going to be an ace in the hole. It's going to help us determine what can be done.
Well, yeah,
there.
it's almost if it's usable or not.
Well, I
Important.
think it is. I think there, you know, it just
Right,
we
there's
just
some
need
of
to-
it,
yeah.
they want to know how much.
But I was excited about this slide, Courtney. So thank you for throwing that in there.
We will switch on over, though, to facility capital maintenance, and Director Noonan will take the floor.
Thank you. Good evening. Next few slides relate to facility maintenance, like Courtney just mentioned. Over the next 5 years, we've budgeted funds to account for facility maintenance. Some of the planned funds include a facility condition assessment in fiscal year 27 and 28. Here at the Municipal Center, we budgeted $25,000 over the next 5 years for capital maintenance, and an additional $60,000 in fiscal year 27 and 28 to account for an EV charging station that could potentially be installed here at the Municipal Center. There's additional $10,000 in fiscal year 28 and 29 to account for a new planter plotter that we expect to be at the end of its useful life by that point in time. As far as public works, some facility maintenance that we have budgeted is $91,000 for this upcoming fiscal year. This includes overhead door replacement, replacing rooftop exhaust unit, air conditioning unit, patches to the patch replacements to existing cold storage shelter. In the out years, we budgeted for paving, salt storage, LED conversion of the facility, and again, additional overhead doors for the Public Works facility.
Can I ask a quick question? So the EV charging station, is that because in Courtney's previous slide there, you guys have the first all-electric vehicle?
So we're budgeting charging infrastructure, that would be down at the plant for that vehicle.
Okay.
This is, as electric vehicles are evolving, one of the items is the police vehicles going electric. So we're planning, if that were to happen, we would need infrastructure for that.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we're going into the water capital replacement program. This is water and sanitation. Start off with the water side. Within the water capital replacement program, we have ongoing residential meter replacements. This is something that we plan to do for the next 5 years. We have outdated meters in residential homes that we're trying to swap out with new radio read equipment. So you can see $173,000, and we taper off from that. We have $1.3 million in the water main replacement program budgeted for this upcoming year. This includes design for next year's water main replacement program as well as construction of replacing the existing water main. Our focus this year would be the Bright Oak subdivision. As you guys are aware, we've had several breaks in that subdivision since November, leading to replacing a little over 100 feet of that 2-inch. But even prior to that, we've had several breaks in the subdivision outside of that one small area that we have already replaced. This replacement program in Bright Oaks is already designed, so we'd just be looking to implement that plan. And then finally, we got the lead service line replacement. Again, as you recall, we are required to have our lead service line inventory to the EPA by April 15th of this year. By 2027, we would need to start implementing that plan. And at a previous committee of the whole meeting, we discussed options, and it was determined that we would like to expedite that process as quickly as possible due to the seemingly low numbers of lead service lines that we have. We currently have 28 lead service lines that are known to us. We have 52 remaining that we need to get into. Staff has been working to put out letters. We have 2 letters out to residents requesting access to the home so that we can get in and inventory them or send us pictures. Since we initially met at that committee of the whole, we had close to 100, so we've knocked that down by half. The second round of letters has gone out. So week by week, we've been getting people responding to us and slowly chipping away at that. When we discussed it,
Can I just ask a quick question,
Sure.
going back to the residential water meter replacement program? I'm just curious, how many do we still have out
That's what I
there?
was wondering. I thought we completed all of them.
I knew we didn't complete them, but it seems like that's an awful lot of money still left that's not done, so I'm just curious, so roughly how many we?
About 1,400, 1,450.
Wow, okay, I didn't realize there were still that many outstanding, okay.
We have 6,400 water meters.
No, I realize that.
The pandemic obviously slowed our progress down in the
Absolutely, I get
replacement
it.
with regards to accessing the home, so we're catching up from that primarily.
I understand.
We do have $200,000 budgeted in each of the fiscal years for lead service line replacement. Once we finalize that number, we'll know exactly how much we will be spending, and then we have a placeholder of $100,000 in the TIF funds to replace those lead service lines within the TIF boundaries. Well 14 at Rotary Park. Currently underway, phase 1 and 2 engineering of a new well at Rotary Park. We're currently at about 50% design. This well will replace the capacity lost at wells 8 and 9 due to the existing PFAS. Through this project, the village was able to receive $560,000 grant from Advanced McHenry County. We anticipate the project starting this upcoming fiscal year with a target completion date of 2026. This current fiscal year, we have $700,000 budgeted for finalizing design and starting construction engineering with $5.5 million approximately in construction. This includes drilling the well, building access to the facility, utilities, and some site work. In fiscal year 2026, we would anticipate the remainder of $300,000 in engineering and the water treatment facility controls, filtration, paving the portion of the trail, from the treatment plant, the water treatment plant, down to Rotary Park parking lot, in the northeast quadrant of the park there. The remaining work there, we have budgeted approximately $5 million. An item to note that this project would be funded utilizing IEPA low-interest loans, which we'll get into a little bit more in the upcoming slides.
Is part of this to make the Route 31 property more marketable?
Here we can see some of the upcoming water fund projects. Many of these projects are not new. They've been presented before. They're part of the existing rate study that was completed. Noting some of the items on the screen include booster pump replacements, facade maintenance, tower painting and cleaning, pump and filtration replacements, and then purchase of vehicles and equipment. Diving into that a little bit more, over the next 5 years, the water fund projects that the projects that we previously discussed include Rotary Park Well 14, annual replacements such as lead service line, water meters, and water mains that we just talked about. Other items in this upcoming fiscal year include cleaning towers 2 and 3 and designing painting tower 1, which is up on High Road. We budgeted $62,000 for well facade maintenance, including roof replacement, tuck pointing, and steel doors at well 13. We have $100,000 budgeted for SCADA upgrades to the water system. And there's just about $1 million budgeted for well rehabilitations next year, including well 4 booster pump and equipment replacement, well 6 submersible pump and motor, and well and booster pumps and equipment at well 11. There's $109,000 allocated for professional services, including GIS, on-call engineering, BSNA software, outreach, and studies. $360,000 budgeted for Pines booster equipment, updates to Pine booster generator connection, and replacing a valve at pressure reducing valve number 1 and the purchase of a new valve turning machine. Vehicles and equipment, we would be budgeting for a new heavy-duty dump truck, replacement of 526 with our second electric vehicle, and a replacement of 531, which is the purchase that we previously approved, but we don't expect to receive that vehicle until next fiscal year. Therefore, we're budgeting for that. In the out years, we continue to budget for a Well 14 project and our annual replacement programs. In fiscal year 25 and 26, we budgeted to paint Tower 1 after design is complete. Also, in those out years, we have fence and camera installations at our existing wells, and we continue to update pumps, motors, and electrical panels at those well facilities. In fiscal year 27-28, we anticipate spending $1.2 million to replace a gravity vessel at well 4. This project, again, would we anticipate utilizing those IEPA low-interest loans. That's how it was scheduled out in that rate study. Now we move on to the sanitation replacement and rehabilitation program. CIP plan has $290,000 budgeted for sanitary main replacement. This includes our existing sanitary main replacement program that we've done for the last couple of years, as well as we're looking to increase an existing 8-inch sanitary main on Jefferson Lane to a 12-inch main to accommodate future Route 31 development. Again, accounted for in that rate study. In the out years, we continue with maintenance of the sanitary sewer replacement program, $174,000, or I'm sorry, 166, 174, 183, and 193 in those years. As part of our sanitary rehabilitation program, we have funds allocated for lift station rehab. The board previously approved design of Fox Trails 1 lift station. The design of that rehabilitation, reconstruction, we're under design of that project currently, and we expect to spend approximately $860,000 next fiscal year to complete that project. Fiscal year 25-26, we budgeted to design Fox Trails 2 and Hunt Club. In fiscal year 26-27, we would anticipate the rehab work to take place on Fox Trails 2 and then design of Hunt Club and Foxford Hills 1. Again, moving into fiscal year 27-28, We would be looking at rehabbing Foxford Hills 1 and design of Greenfields, Cambria, and River Orchard. So just making sure that all the infrastructure stays in good condition.
Nice question about the low-interest loans. When we apply or take those out, are the new payments for those kind of coming in at a time when other loans might be running off? Or are these additional payments that we'll have to make, and then how are they funded?
Do you want to take that, Kelly?
I'd have to go back and look and see when our other loans are coming up due. I'm sure that we could structure so that the payments aren't at the same time as those other loans. And they would then still be funded with our water and sand revenue that we get from the billing.
I believe the only loan right now in water and sanitation is related to the wastewater treatment plant phosphorus project.
Correct, because the other one ended this fiscal year '24.
And the rate study was built around, the current rates that are in play were built around the anticipated expenditures for that 5-year period and those funding mechanisms. So being able to pay back and fund those low-interest loan payments was factored into what the rates, with the revenue coming in.
Okay, so you wouldn't be going to the public for additional.
Correct, we
No.
would not,
No.
right.
Moving to the sanitation fund projects, again, these projects aren't new. They're accounted for in that rate study that we've been talking about. Noted on the screen include projects such as SCADA upgrades, vehicle equipment purchases, surveys, digester work, and blower and ditch replacement. We'll move into the 5-year plan and dive into those a little bit more. In the sanitation fund 5-year summary, you can see the projects that we just previously discussed, such as the sanitary main replacement, lift station rehabilitations. We also have $203,000 budgeted for professional services, GIS work, outreach and studies, and on-call engineering. We have $150,000 budgeted for SCADA upgrades. We're currently working on current SCADA upgrades to lift stations as kind of a two-phase approach. We've gotten about half of them done, so we're looking to complete the other half this upcoming year. There's $180,000 budgeted for digester inspection and leak detection equipment. In fiscal year 24 and 25, there's $751,000 budgeted for 3 screw pump replacements and $70,000 for facility upgrades such as bathroom, break room, and locker room, and camera installations. Some of those were budgeted in previous years, didn't get accomplished, so we're just pushing them to future years. And $645,000 budgeted for vehicles and equipment. This includes a new Vector truck, InfoSense sound system for staff to help locate breaks or leaks within the current infrastructure. There's also $15,000 budgeted for Mr. Manhole, which is spread across the water fund, 15 in water fund, 15 in sanitation, 15 in general fund. 5-year water and sanitation summary here. Looking 5 years, we would anticipate spending approximately $13.6 million in the upcoming budget year, with approximately 6.2 of that utilizing those IEPA low interest loans, not directly coming from the fund, but being paid over that 20-year period. In fiscal year 25-26, we'd anticipate spending $8.8 million, again, approximately 5.3 utilizing low interest loans. In the out years of fiscal year 26-27, approximately $5 million. Fiscal year 27-28, $5.5 million. Again, with some of those projects utilizing low interest loans, that would be approximately 2.6 in those years. And then finally in 28-29, approximately, in 28-29, we would anticipate spending approximately $1.4 million.
All right, we'll switch. Any questions about water and sanitation? So we'll switch over to the vehicle and equipment fund. These are vehicles, these would be vehicles paid only out of the vehicle and equipment fund, so it wouldn't include the vehicles or equipment that Kaylin has already mentioned related to water and sand. So you'll see the staff is recommending that we continue to lease our vehicles through Enterprise as we have the past few years. So you'll see for the police vehicles, we are proposing $185,000 roughly each year. That is pretty stable because by the end of this fiscal year, we will have leased all of the police vehicles. Admin and Public Works light-duty vehicles, which are those white trucks you often see staff in. Though we are proposing for next year $45,000, and on the out years increasing, adding in some of the other vehicles we still have remaining. That includes community development vehicles as well as a few more at Public Works. Keep in mind though, annually we review these vehicles. We see if our current vehicles, what condition are they in? Is it worth it to replace them at that time? So this is just if we were to include all the vehicles into the program. On the medium and heavy duty vehicle side, we currently lease some medium duty vehicles, so F-350s. We're continuing to do that in the 5-year period at $71,800 a year. And then we are proposing to purchase 2 snowplows in the 5-year period, one in FY25 and one in FY26. We're proposing $300,000 each. And then we are also proposing purchasing some heavy-duty vehicles, potentially, rather than using the leasing program, just doing leasing through a dealer or some changing in how we purchase those vehicles.
The heavy-duty trucks.
The heavy-duty trucks, yes. Oops, sorry. On the equipment side, we are proposing that Mr. Manhole in FY25. This is the 1/3 that would be paid for using the Vehicle and Equipment Fund. In FY26, we are proposing the replacement of the chipper. It is definitely coming to end of life. And then in the out year, we are proposing the purchase of a brand new loader as well as a medium-duty tractor, both of which do have a few more years in them, but are approaching that end of life.
I'm excited about this Mr. Manhole thing. I'm telling you, you drive around. First, if we get this and Route 14 isn't finished, I'm sending us out there to do that. The one on 14 going east. How many times have you hit that?
Every day.
Yeah. And people swerve, and it's like, sorry, I digress. It's the little things in life. Come on.
So here's just a summary of the fund as a whole, looking at $631,000 next year, roughly $779,000 FY26, $400,000 FY27, $400,000 FY28, and then that increase to roughly $822,000 in FY29. Here's a new slide, we'll call it. It's all focused on police. So as you know, we are required to purchase the body-worn cameras and have that implemented by calendar year 25. So, and we also, our in-car cameras, which we currently do have, are coming to that end of life here quickly. So we are proposing to purchase new body-worn cameras and in-car cameras under the same platform, which just also increases efficiency. So you'll see purchasing in FY25, $157,500, and then the $46,000 annually includes cloud storage, maintenance as well is included in that contract, and a potential re-up of the equipment. So if we so choose in an out year, in this 5-year contract that we're proposing here, they would be able to get new equipment before the 5-year period is up. Portable radio replacements, you'll see FY26, $226,000. Again, the radios are reaching end of life, so this would be just replacing what we currently have. And as well as the taser replacement. Tasers have changed in how they structure their contracts. So here at $10,500 each year, that is essentially to lease the equipment and then also license the officers to use the equipment. So it's one contract, 5 years long. Any questions about the police equipment?
Sure, I do. With the body-worn cameras, it'll just tell you that there'll be a ton more FOIAs. Does any of this, who does our FOIAs on staff, and does this create a lot more work for them, and how are we paying for that?
Yes, we anticipate that there will be additional inquiries as it relates to FOIAs related to body-worn camera video. There's some exemptions in the Freedom of Information Act as it relates to what we have to release. But in our budget, this forthcoming, we would suggest that we have 2.5 people in our records section. We anticipate an additional workload, so we would request that we increase that workforce to 3 full-time equivalents in our record section.
And this is still an unmanned mandate from the state.
So,
And I just wanted to dovetail on the comments that were made. The in-car cameras are beyond their useful life. It's a legacy Panasonic Arbitrator system, and we thought that it would be most appropriate to use the same platform for our body-worn cameras and our in-car camera video, the videos for in-car camera. So we've been holding off that replacement until we determine a provider. We've looked at multiple body-worn camera providers, in-car video camera providers that use the same platforms, and we have a committee within our department that's been looking at that, and we have another demonstration coming up here on Thursday for another firm that is going to demonstrate their body-worn cameras and in-car cameras to some of our line personnel.
Does the, can you lease that equipment like you lease the car, or do you have to buy it?
You can. There's options to do that as well. The first year you see there's $157,000 and change. About half of that, about $76,897 is for the body-worn cameras, and the $80,378 would be for the in-car videos. And then, yeah, you can, there's options for that. It's hard to get very good information from all the providers as it relates to all the options that we can obtain as well, and in regards to like the license plate recognition, we can include that in our body-worn cameras as well.
But the leasing company for the cars doesn't prohibit
No.
you from putting that in, okay.
No, and they would be different. You know, the providers would be different than the vehicle. You know, our leasing providers for our vehicles, and it included, I believe that the costs also included installation, if I remember correctly.
Thank you.
An excellent point by Trustee Collier about how some of these capital items do have an overlap into our operations budget. And as the chief mentioned, there'll be more to come at the next budget workshop with regards to staffing and the impacts that this may have on that.
All right, we'll switch over to community parking.
Thanks. Good evening, Board. Before we get into the 5-year summary for parking, I know normally we take a look at the revenues and we have a graph, and that graph has looked a little sad over the last few years. So we didn't include it in the presentation, but wanted to give the Board an update of currently where we're standing, because we're projected to be in quite a bit better shape than we were last year. So end of last fiscal year, we ended in that parking fund with roughly about $45,000 in revenue. Currently, we're projected to end this year at $80,000 in revenue. The bulk of that increase is coming from our daily parking. So last year we were at about 27. We're projected to end at 58,000 this year just in that daily parking. The commuter parking permits, not as much of an increase, a little bit, about 16 additional permits this year compared to last year. But going in an upward trend, which is good. Comparatively, 2 years ago, we were at about 24% of what that pre-pandemic number is. And if we hit our projections this year, we'll be at 43%. So trending in the right direction. Our 5-year capital summary for the parking fund. So we're proposing in the next fiscal year $112,000 in projects. Most of this is maintenance. So we have the commuter lot landscaping, parking lot restriping, a camera replacement, budgeting $70,000 for parking terminal replacements that are at the end of their useful life, as well as $15,000 for the parking lot fencing improvements. That's in the south commuter lot, and that's a continuation of the project that's already ongoing in this fiscal year. In the out year, fiscal 28, we have commuter lot expansion that we're proposing of $432,000, and that's a TIF eligible expense.
All right, we'll now take a look at some of our roadway programs. First up, we have the Road and Parkway Maintenance Capital Fund item. In here, we have 2 annual contracted amounts for Parkway tree replacement, that's $20,000 annually, as well as contracted tree trimming services for $15,000 annually. Last year, we anticipated having the US Route 14 sidewalk repairs occur. That has been pushed to this upcoming fiscal year due to delays in receiving permits from IDOT. So that will be $60,000 in this upcoming fiscal year. That other line item here for roadway repairs and maintenance, about $230,000 per year, increasing each year just with the cost of materials and labor. That's broken down in the chart at the right, includes things like street repairs, sidewalk repairs, pavement markings, and asphalt patching. Here is a familiar map. This is our sidewalk damage locations map. Currently, sidewalk replacements and repairs are included as part of our annual road program. So that's how those are funded. We have a large inventory of data for this map. You can see that we have about 3,000 locations that are in the watch category. Those do not present a present concern for trip hazards, but rather something that could progress into that in the near future. So it's just something to keep an eye on. We have about 1,500 locations in the low level of severity for sidewalk damage, about 300 moderate severity, and about 100 that are marked as high severity. These damage assessments were done by a consultant for us this year, updated this year. Here is a look at our current pavement conditions. Again, we had a consultant come out just recently in December to reassess the pavement conditions of our roadways. We do this annually. This year, we found that our average PCI, or pavement condition index, is a 66.7. That's on a scale of 1 to 100, and that about 33% of our roads are in poor or worse condition. Our goal for this program is to have an average PCI of about 70, so that's a satisfactory condition. That's the goal of our annual road program, to try and increase this average and get it as close to that 70 as possible. This program is currently funded using MFT dollars, so that is our ambition for the program. With that, here is our estimated 5-year road program as it sits right now. In this upcoming fiscal year 25, we are slated to resurface 2nd Street, Ross, Aberdeen, Prairie, Leith, Perth, Thomas, and Pin Oak. You see each year here we have designed for the following year's road program budgeted. That's that first item. Then construction, engineering, and oversight while construction is occurring, budgeted in the second line, and then the construction itself.
And just keep in mind the out years, besides First Street, which we know we've received some STP funding for, the remainder of those could be changed, and that depends on just how the roads over the next few years are also deteriorating. If some start to see, are going worse than others, this program could change.
Can I ask you to back up 2 slides, Courtney? I don't want to make everybody seasick here, but if you look at all the yellow and orange and red that is on this slide, and then we go forward 1 slide to see what we can afford to do in the next 5 years. I wish I could find better words other than pathetic.
Yeah.
I mean, that's terrible. We go back 1 more and look at everything north of 3 Oaks Road. There's 1 neighborhood that would probably say, yeah, things are nice. Everything on all ends of town. You could even argue from anything north of 14, there's only a handful of places that could feel comfortable with it. This screams for alternative revenue sources and us finding different ways to fund our roads. We're already below our average. When we do surveys, I'm preaching to the choir here, but if we do surveys, what do we hear?
Roads.
We hear roads. This should absolutely emphasize that we need to find a way to fix this.
Well, and as we talked about, the longer we put it off, the more expensive it gets.
Yeah, with that road program, here is our First Street Corridor Improvement Project, which is scheduled for Phase 2 design in this upcoming fiscal year. That's budgeted $60,000, and then scheduled for construction the following fiscal year 26. We have been awarded an STP grant funding for this project and fiscal year 26 construction, which will cover 80% of the cost, leaving our local share 20% at about $400,000, as shown here. And this project is able to use both MFT and TIF funding and will resurface First Street as well as add on-street bike lanes. Based on recent committee of the whole discussion and an open house with residents of the Hilltop neighborhood, staff has come together and put together a recommended alternative for sidewalks in the Hilltop subdivision, which is shown here. 6-foot carriage walks are shown in orange on this map here. With this alignment, we were able to minimize impacts to properties and driveway parking. 2 impacted properties are shown in red, and their loss of driveway parking is shown in the bottom left table. Neither of these properties responded with opposition to sidewalks in the neighborhood. And this alternative also avoids a lot of utility pole conflicts that would be encountered on the south side of East Cherry Street. Additionally, in order to make this alternative work, we would need to acquire a small, about 30 square foot easement with the property owners at 110 East Cherry Street, as their property line goes directly up to the roadway. Similarly, the bus stop locations, they're shown current here. The one on Hill and Cherry would need to be moved to the other side of the street, and the bus route just reversed around that island area to accommodate for that. We have $45,000 budgeted in this upcoming fiscal year to design this alternative, and $480,000 budgeted the following year for construction. Next, we have the Maplewood Access Road project, which is ongoing. We are nearing the completion of Phase 1 engineering with this project. A small amount of Phase 1 contract will be carried over into this next fiscal year. The remainder of that $420,000 will be the beginning of Phase 2 engineering, which will carry over into fiscal year 25-26 and finish up there with that $185,000. This timeline shown here is the earliest and best case scenario staff can see for being able to receive any eligible or potential grant funding we could receive, which would progress us into a 2-phase construction schedule in fiscal years 27-28 and fiscal year 28-29 at about $5 million and $3.3 million in those years respectively. And shown here are some recommended alternatives that we showed to the public at an open house meeting last fall for the Maplewood project. And as we finish this Phase 1 engineering project now, we will derive to a recommended alternative for the project.
So that's a $9 million project, pretty much.
Approximately. Here's another similar or familiar project. This was proposed last year. We applied for ITEP grant funding for this Rawson Bridge Bikeway expansion project last year, and we're unsuccessful in receiving that funding. However, our consultants are quite confident that upon reapplication, we would be successful in receiving this funding this year, especially with the collaborative nature of this project. This incorporates obviously us, the Village of Cary, as well as Nunda and Algonquin Townships and the Village of Port Barrington. With that ITEP grant, we'd be eligible for an 80% reimbursement. We're budgeting for Phase 1 design this upcoming year in the amount of $45,000. Again, $45,000 fiscal year 26 for Phase 2 design, and about $610,000 in fiscal year 27 for construction and Phase 3 engineering. This project would add on-street and off-street bike paths as shown in yellow here that would interconnect Cary all the way out to the Village of Port Barrington.
That's an outstanding project.
Here we have improvements to the US Route 14 at 3 Oaks Road intersection. This is a future unfunded project that would involve improving the lane capacity at this intersection. As you can see, and are probably used to seeing, there's a lot of long queue times that occur at this intersection, a lot of delays. This improvement would also increase the safety of the intersection overall, improve railroad crossings and traffic signals. The project would be a potential candidate for SDP grant funding, and we are proposing $20,000 in fiscal year 27-28 for conceptual planning of this project to create a detailed concept and plan of this project that would give us a better chance at receiving that grant funding by presenting that much information. This improvement would also interconnect some more trails and off-street routes that are present in our area and in Crystal Lake at this intersection. In April, the city of Crystal Lake will have a letting for that future traffic signal and path extension shown here. So another interconnection will be made. And we're anticipating this project to cost about $5 million. This project would be the intersection of Georgetown Drive and Three Oaks Road and their traffic signal modernization. This intersection currently does not have pedestrian signals, and it has the oldest traffic signals in town here that still use incandescent bulbs. Those present a challenge for repairs and oftentimes some long lead times if it needs repairs. So this project would then incorporate and implement LED signal heads at the intersection, new battery backup equipment, updated pedestrian signals, and enhancement of the existing crosswalks. We are proposing $50,000 in fiscal year 25-26 for the design of these improvements. And here is just an overall breakdown of these 5-year roadway projects and a summary of them. You can see that our road program is fully MFT funded, as we just discussed, as would be the proposed Route 14 Three Oaks improvements, outside of any grant funding that might be received. Hilltop sidewalks and the Rawson Bridge bikeway improvements would be funded out of the capital fund. And then we have these remaining projects as shown that would be eligible for TIF funding. Again, here is another look at those projects broken down. You can see that in future years, a lot of that funding would be derived from those TIF funds as shown. Here we have community signage and streetlight improvements. We have $50,000 budget out of both the capital and TIF funds, so $100,000 total in fiscal year 25-26 for street light replacements, LED street light replacements in town. This would be a continuation of our ongoing efforts to get all our street lights up to LED standards. We also have in fiscal year 29 illuminated street name signs similar to those that were just constructed, our new downtown streetscape area at the intersection of West Main and High Road. That's $160,000. At our next board meeting, next Tuesday, we have for approval a wayfinding signage design contract. So that would be starting in fiscal year 24-25, the amount of $125,000 out of the capital fund, $10,000 out of the TIF fund, which would allow us to design bid-ready documents for wayfinding signage and then fabricate and install these signage throughout town, as well as subdivision signs, and then an additional $20,000 for this in fiscal year 26.
I have a quick question. About how many signs are you guys anticipating getting for, the illuminated street name signs for the 160,000 in fiscal year 28-29?
I don't know off the top of my head, but we can count them up and make sure that that's in the weekly report for you guys this week.
Okay, thank you.
I believe in our past CIPs, it was for the Route 14 signals throughout town. So that's for however many signals there are on Route 14. Half dozen at least, corners. So there's 4 per intersection.
We'll get a breakdown. But this is something that the village has been talking about since how long, Mr. Dudek?
Too long.
A long time.
And they are, this project is shovel-ready. The design plans have been done. They just need to be updated for whatever year that they are issued for bid.
I've gotten a lot of positive feedback on the high road at Main Street.
Mhm.
Yeah. They're expensive. They're not cheap.
Next up, we have some future stormwater improvement projects that can increase the ability of our areas to drain as well as improve our stormwater capacity. These first three projects as shown here are shovel-ready projects that have been shown in past CIPs. They're already designed. Cary Creek drainage improvements for $200,000 fiscal year '29. School Street improvements for $211,000 in fiscal year '27. And Veterans Park drainage improvements in fiscal year '29 for $200,000. The regional stormwater improvements item is not shovel-ready, but that would incorporate stormwater management design that would increase the storage capacity in our downtown area in the case of any redevelopment down there, in the amount of $500,000. These projects would all be eligible for TIF funding.
All right, we'll switch over to Cary Lake at Rotary Park. You'll see that a large majority of the projects proposed here are related to maintenance. That includes tree planting, parking lot maintenance, trail maintenance, fish stocking, and we have proposed a controlled burn every 2 years. The two projects I'd like to highlight are in FY25, $20,000 for electric utility installation. That would be to finish running the electric to the pavilion. And then also paved trail design. This would be to design the remainder of the trail that is not being paved as part of the Well 14 project on the outer loop. So we would keep at this time we're proposing to keep the inner loop still gravel, but at least get the outer so it's fully paved all the way around.
Are we still looking for grant money for those two?
Yeah, we're always looking to see what grants are available. We applied for the OSLAD grant, which included the pavilion, some fitness equipment. Right. It was a pretty substantial project, and that's usually what the OSLAD requires. Right. And then you'll just see in the out years here, it is all maintenance costs that we are proposing at this time. All right, we'll switch to the downtown improvements. So, of course, this project's been talked about quite a bit, as this was the one we received the RTA Access to Transit grant, where 60% of it would be funded. That's the Depot Plaza enhancements. We are anticipating construction to begin fall 2024. You'll see total cost for construction is $754,000. Construction engineering is $82,500. Keep in mind that the village share of this project is a TIF-eligible expense. And you'll see in FY26, we're just proposing budgeting a little bit of additional funding in the event construction is not completed in the fiscal year. We'll call this Phase 3 of potential downtown improvements. That's alfresco alley enhancements. We're proposing to design this project in the upcoming fiscal year, and we have shown that construction could potentially begin in FY26 at $759,000. That's construction and construction engineering. Staff, of course, as it's related to this project, would be looking to find some outside funding, but as proposing that construction could begin as early as FY26 if design was completed. Here we have downtown holiday decorations. Now that Main Street is complete, we're proposing $20,000 next fiscal year and an additional $10,000 in FY26 for different holiday decorations, whether it's the garland, some type of wreath attached to the poles, or you see these larger, I call them picture op pieces.
Instagrammable moments.
Exactly. For the
As
youth.
you kids say. Right, Tim?
Here is the summary of all the downtown improvements. You'll see a large majority of these, of course, are TIF eligible expenses. The one I did want to highlight is the modular vehicle barrier system. You may remember this from last year's CIP. It's those large steel barriers that we would place at both ends of Main Street if we ever had an event. Mary Carey, Main Street Fest are the two examples that come to mind. The $126,000 proposed includes the actual barriers themselves as well as a trailer to carry them all. And then we are proposing in FY29 $60,000 for potential EV charging infrastructure in the downtown area. You may recall we did run electric for that up to the 6-hour line. So it's ready. Here is a slide that just summarizes all those TIF3 proposed projects. So you'll see at FY25, about $1 million worth of projects would be TIF eligible. And then in the out years, 1.2 million, 1 million, and then of course 28 and 29 being the largest because it has that Maplewood access road construction. Again, keeping in mind, while these projects are proposed in these years, they could move depending on how much funding is available. I'm going to give the big bad slide over to Kelly.
Your favorite slide, right? So obviously you've seen this before. This slide is the total CIP of everything that we just saw in the presentation. So all of the funds on the left side, all of the fiscal years going across the top, and our 5-year total cost. That's a big number, about $61 million in the 5-year CIP that staff is proposing. A couple things I want to point out in our capital projects fund. Normally in the past it has said no funding source. Now we have the municipal cannabis revenue that's going into that fund. And we're also proposing closing the building fund and moving all of those dollars into the capital projects fund for this next fiscal year. For these TIF eligible expenses, especially in the next fiscal year, obviously we've not started receiving TIF increment as it is new. So in the current stage that it's in now, it would be a loan from capital projects and from the water and sanitation fund to cover those TIF expenses. And then once TIF increment starts coming in, then the TIF will reimburse those funds. Other thing I want to point out on here, water and sanitation, obviously that's always, typically the biggest 5-year total cost. As Director Noonan had mentioned too, a big portion of that will be through IEPA loans.
Those loans are guaranteed. I mean, we could get those loans. It's not like the mean bankers that turn you down.
We currently have an application in. We expect, I apologize, I meant to mention this during the slide. We expect to hear from the EPA end of March, but we're very confident that our application has a strong probability of getting awarded just because the water resiliency portion of it and PFAS mitigation. So both staff and consultants believe it's very likely we will see that in the end of March.
And in any situation that if for some reason that loan was not received, staff would come together again and go over those projects and just rearrange as needed. That could include pushing projects out past the 5-year period.
Thank you.
This is it for you, Village Board. So if you have any questions or concerns about the 5-year CIP, we're ready for them.
I have a question. Just trying to take some notes. Did I have even close to about $12 million that would be TIF eligible expenses out of this? Is that a number even close?
13,000. Second one down.
13 million.
Yes.
So, I haven't experienced a successful TIF in my 21 years here. So I'm asking from a point of view of not only a board member, but a resident. So we have a TIF, and I think the maximum TIF was at like 60 million or some number like that originally when we were going through this?
That's the TIF budget you're referring to, correct?
So 60 million, 12, 13 million of which is earmarked for certain things here. What I'm seeing, I mean, I like all the expenditures and what they're earmarked to. But I guess I have to question, is that investment of $13 million going to increase the EAV based on where I see those expenses going? What is the general thought of, everybody here in the room? Because I don't know. I'll be honest, I don't know.
A large majority of the projects that we have proposed here, and of course can be changed, right? Especially in the out years, we're just showing you what could be utilized, but a large majority of these projects were actually included when we discussed the TIF budget of potential projects that, especially on the public infrastructure side, those stormwater improvements is the first one that comes to mind, that we have not had a funding source for those projects. They often are the ones that first get pushed, and we do see some merit to those. I'll let Brian continue.
Sure. So from a direct benefit to the AAV, not necessarily these projects they wouldn't generally in themselves generate new EAV. That's where the development has to come in. As Kelly mentioned, from a standpoint that, the other funds will have to more or less give a loan to the TIF for a while to cover those expenses, and the TIF would reimburse them. As we would start to see increment come into the TIF, that's what we would envision. So, we haven't seen what the numbers are going to be for the first year of the TIF yet. We'll start to see that, and that'll give it a better idea of what projects you can actually tackle as you go through the process. So the $60 million that the TIF, had budgeted for, we projected out. These are the types of public improvements that would be necessary in the area, that would be barriers to development, but also encourage development. That hopefully that development would follow, and then would start to generate increment within the TIF.
I agree with asking the question, but I think we could stop overanalyzing it, because 80% of that 13 million is one project. One. I mean, so
Right.
if we're asking the question of, is that $10 million worthwhile for the access road? I mean, it's not quite that much, but roughly. Worth it for that access road. When you're talking about the locale of the TIF district or where it's at, I think that 75% of what we're talking about becomes a whole lot harder without another access, without that access road. That is kind of the linchpin, and that's always been the starting point, is we need a different access point. So in the long term, I agree. We need to define, is everything going to make that area better? That's the intent of the TIF. And of this $13 million, with $8 or $9 million being earmarked for that road, I would agree. I would say, yes, it is.
Well, when you look at the public improvements, private follow almost immediately. And when we look at, in talking with some of the business owners and building owners downtown that want to redevelop their property and bring in more residents and more restaurants or whatever, we need an access point. Out of all of this, Rick, didn't want to steal your thunder, but it was like the majority of that $13 million goes to one project that we've been talking about for years, that is needed to alleviate the congestion in the downtown. And with the potential of bringing more people downtown, that congestion is just going to get worse. So, we've got to figure this out. I think that it's a project that I think is been needed for many, many years. But
So not to be a Debbie Downer, but I think what you'll hear, what you could hear, and is the reason that I even asked the question, if I'm looking at $13 million of improvements, so that besides downtown improvements, you have this access road to develop for 250, give or take, apartments, that's such an easy EAV increase, nobody would argue it.
right.
I think there's a lot of people that would argue that spending that much money for road without redeveloping Maplewood, that the return may not come. I'm not saying that's me.
I know,
I'm
I
just
understand,
saying
I totally
people might say
understand.
that.
But, we've got to have that vision. And remember, our TIF is just not Maplewood. It's a much bigger piece. Maplewood was a part of it, and obviously it's no longer there. But when you look at how we're going to get people in and out of the downtown, we want to have opportunities. There's opportunities we're talking to a developer, a business owner that wants to add to a building and add more apartments to that, and that's just going to add to it. So I think that, you know, we've got to continue with that forward thinking. How are we, what's best for us, and how are we going to do, be able to provide, you know, access to and from the downtown. I get it. It's a big chunk of change. But, you know, there's opportunities to think there's grant opportunities that would be available. I mean, there's a lot of grants that we might be able to qualify, especially for new roads, new access roads from a downtown. So that number will, I think that we could look at that.
Yeah.
What's
It
the,
can shrink.
what's the total cost of well 14? That's a $10 million project? So you got 10 million, call it $10 million for well 14, you get $10 million for the Saxo. We're at 20 million of the 60 over the next 5 years, just in two projects. So I would kind of flip the script and come from the staff side. If you took away, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on for the remaining 2/3 of our 5-year budget. So I think that it's very well put together. We're doing two really big things kind of in the same horizon here, because $60 million makes my eyes pop in a community this small. Particularly when 32 of it is funded and the other 30 is kind of what we're reaching for. So I think we're getting a lot of bang for our buck, and I would agree that any and all funding sources, including grants, are, you know, both Crystal Lake got 3 OSLADs and Huntley got 1 OSLAD, and, you know, so there's plenty of money to be had out there.
And keeping in mind that
due.
well
We're
14 is also partially funded by the water fund with the low interest loans, so that is not entirely dependent upon TIF.
Correct.
Of the five, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so same number.
Just
But
happens.
again, the public improvement, private will follow. I mean, one of the main reasons we're going out to Route 31 is for that opportunity. So I think that'll follow.
Well, and that's the idea, that's why we set up the TIF.
Yeah.
We have to keep in mind the big picture of why we undertook this.
And to that point too, just to look at TIF 1 as example, you know, when we redid Jandis Cutoff
Correct.
Road and that signal intersection, we had a number of grants that helped pay for that roadway, that then allowed that TIF to put in the lift station that was on the Selkie property. So there is potential with the Maplewood Access Road that we could get grants to lower that number that would be paid out from the TIF, that could then be used for other projects in the downtown area to encourage development.
I'd say well done. Great job by
Absolutely.
everybody.
It's amazing the amount of information
Yeah, not
that you
well,
guys put
well
together.
done.
An outstanding job. Anybody else have any questions, comments? None said? I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned at 7:13. Nice job. Pardon me? It's all right. Good questions.